So we're going to invite Bethany Sherman up on stage here real quick to talk about ORELAP Accreditation. And then we'll hear from Lieutenant Jennifer Bills from the Eugene Police Department and get the EPD perspective on the passing of Measure 91 over a year and a half later. Then we'll talk to Sunny Jones from the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and she'll talk again a little bit about pesticide regulations and the guide list that they've submitted. And then, of course, Brian Michaels, local legend, cannabis activist, Brian Michaels Law. He'll talk a little bit about business compliance. And he told me he's really excited to hear your questions tonight. So throughout the evening, if you have any law-based questions, start storing those away for Brian so he can answer those at the end of the evening. And without further ado, Miss Bethany Sherman, please take the stage.
Hello, everybody. It's been a long time since I've been on this stage, since before I had my daughter. She's 3 months old now. She's supposed to be here at some point. I don't know, it doesn't look like she's here yet, but she's so amazing. I have to recommend to everyone, if you haven't had babies, do. It's so magical. Having babies is really, really magical. But okay, enough about my daughter. I won't bore you with that. I'm going to talk tonight about ORELAP accreditation and what it means to the cannabis industry. So you're aware, so that I qualify myself to talk on this subject, OG Analytical, my lab, was accredited for every regulatory analysis required by Oregon marijuana law. We're super excited about that. There are only 2 labs in the state of Oregon that have met that accreditation requirement. So we are today accredited. What does ORELAP accreditation mean to the industry? I think we need to start by defining what is ORELAP. There seems to be a lot of confusion about ORELAP versus OLCC and how the licensing respects the ORELAP accreditation, et cetera. There are 2 regulatory bodies, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But first, to define ORELAP, ORELAP stands for the Oregon Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program. It is a state-run program, but it's internationally recognized. ORELAP accredits traditionally environmental laboratories, drinking water laboratories, environmental air quality laboratories, and they accredit these laboratories to the TNI standard. TNI stands for the NELAC Institute, which is an internationally recognized environmental laboratory accreditation program. So ORELAP doesn't just, even though they're state-run in Oregon and state-funded, they don't just do accreditation for environmental laboratories in Oregon, they do it all over the nation, and they actually do accreditation across the globe as well. The National Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program, which is what ORELAP accredits under, their main purpose is to, and the purpose of the accreditation program itself is to ensure the competency of the labs doing the work. When we're talking about consumer safety, we need to make sure that the labs qualifying these products, water, air quality, cannabis, have competency to make that assessment, that they can say, with qualification, yes, this product is clean for consumption. So really, that protects consumers from harmful contaminants, and it also protects producers from liability issues. The accreditation requirements, to get accredited as a laboratory, you have to meet a lot of really strict requirements. And this is some technical stuff, and we're going to get into some really high-level detail. I'm not going to go into too much science for you on this, but there's a number of things that as a laboratory we have to do to prove our competency to do this type of work. We have to validate our methods, and in the normal world of analytical chemistry, most analytes have methods validated for them. When you want to get filling in your walls tested for asbestos, for example, there are methods there are published methods, peer-reviewed published methods, the laboratories can reference to test for asbestos to make sure that there's no asbestos in your insulation, that's what it's called. But for cannabis, that doesn't exist because this is such a new field. So when you talk about testing cannabis for anything, for potency, even for pesticides, for mold, et cetera, this is all new. So we, as a laboratory, we have to create our methods. How are we going to test for this? And how are we going to make sure that our methods that we have employed are successful at doing a really good job. So we have to do method validation, we have to do proficiency testing twice a year for every analyte. Every chemist that works in the lab has to do demonstrations of capability before they can even touch the product. Traceability, we have to ensure that we have this direct line of historical documents for every single thing that touches every sample. Document control, management review, internal audits, quality control, these are all things that requirements that we have to meet in order to get accredited. And just to kind of give you a high-level perspective on what each of these are, method validation, again, provides evidence that the method is appropriate for the purpose. Precision, it's a measurement of our precision, and I've got a nice little, pointer's not working, a nice little diagram for you here that shows the difference between precision and accuracy and trueness. Precision is when you have a nice cluster. Your target is precise. If you have trueness rather than bias, if you have bias, all of your results are shifted off to the side. Trueness means there's no bias present. Accuracy means that you're hitting the target on point. So what our ideal goal is, right, is trueness, precision, and accuracy, so we're hitting the target every time. And so we have to prove that we are precise and accurate and true. We have to measure our working range, our limit of quantitation, our limit of detection, our linearity, ruggedness, robustness. Ruggedness and robustness are basically interjecting variables into the method and determining what changes in the method, like how does that affect our results. And then selectivity and specificity, are there any interferences? Thanks. Proficiency testing is a fun one, and this is something Erica brought up in my original first slide that introduces OG Analytical. We've participated in proficiency testing since we started, and we've had really, really great results with our proficiency testing for potency, for residual solvents, for pesticides, the whole gambit. Anything that we get accredited for, we have to do proficiency testing twice a year for every single analyte. And when I talk about analyte, that's the component that we're looking for. Is it THC? Is it CBD? Is it abamectin, pesticide? Is it hexane, residual solvent? Every single analyte in our required regulatory list, we have to do a proficiency study for. And the way a proficiency study works, this is, I grabbed this image off the internet, so I gave credits down there at the bottom. But this is some proficiency testing company that creates a proficiency test sample. So what it looks like is this company creates this sample, and they send the sample out to all the laboratories. And this is any laboratory that wants to participate. If you're getting accredited, it's required that you participate. And the accreditation agency has to report your results right back to the accrediting body so that there's no potential for bias or interruption in the dissemination. So the laboratory then has to run the full analysis on that sample and then return the results to the accreditation agency. And then the accreditation agency reports your results back to the accrediting body. And so basically it's a known value that the proficiency testing laboratory creates in that sample to send out, and then they measure how well you do based on your results. Traceability is a complete document chain that tells the comprehensive history of any interactions with the sample. So again, this is so much logging. It is so much logging. We have to log lot numbers of all consumables that are used on every sample, and this goes from reagents to solvents, reference materials, sample containers, weigh boats, down to our spatulas, down to the sterile sample containers that we use, and wax paper if we use that. We have to have lot numbers for everything, and every lot number that pertains to anything that touches that sample has to be tracked for that sample. So it's a lot of documentation per sample. We have to record daily temperatures of refrigerators, freezers, transport coolers. We have to maintain calibration logs. We have to keep maintenance logs. And anything that the sample touches has to be recorded. And the purpose for this is that if we ever get slapped with a subpoena for some data from the court, we have to be able to show that we have a complete chain for that sample of everything that we did with that sample. That protects us for liability and also protects our clients. If you're using us as your laboratory, that's how we protect you. Document control. So in getting our accreditation, we created or revised 137 documents. This is I snapped a screenshot today of all of our binders with new documents and everything that we are tracking at our laboratory. And this is everything from, again, our calibration logs, our maintenance logs, our solutions logs, our bench sheets, our SOPs, our quality systems documentation. That's our quality manual. That's the big one right there in the middle. But everything, all of our reference standards, everything is documented. And every form that we have is revision locked, and we have print permissions on them. One person is allowed to print them, and if we need to make changes, we have to fill out a form to make changes to that document. And that's how we make sure that we don't have random copies of documents floating around that are no longer relevant, and we can keep that tight control on our document chain. Manuals don't leave the lab, or I would have brought one to share with you because they're quite robust in themselves. Management review is a fun one because this is really my territory at the lab. I'm not a scientist, I'm on the business side, so I get to deal with the management review, and at least annually, minimally annually, we have to look at product conformance, customer feedback, results of audits, process performance, changes, management reviews, corrective and preventive actions, and then we have to take all of that stuff and we have to make sure that we are handling things appropriately. That if we need to improve on things to help our efficiency, to help increase our ability to assist our clients with their needs, that is how we make sure that we are staying up to date with everything and that we are maintaining compliance with the T&I standard. Internal audits has to happen pretty regularly. OG Analytical has a policy of doing it every 6 months. I think this is something that labs could do once a year, once every 2 years, because ORELAP does their random audits of accredited labs at least every 2 years. We have a policy at OG Analytical to do it every 6 months. And what this means is that we have the accreditation checklist, and our internal auditor, we have somebody that will come in and do this for us, will basically go through and do an accreditation audit for us in-house so that we can check our systems internally and make sure that we're still in alignment with the accreditation requirements, that we aren't, slipping through the cracks anywhere. And this helps keep us on point. Our next internal audit is scheduled for December 5th. Quality control is a really big one, and this is really how we make sure that our data is always on point, that we're always giving you good, reliable, accurate data. And this is just one little glimpse of this. Per run, we have to run all sorts of samples. 3 blanks, one for solvents, one for reagents, one for matrix. We have to run a spike, we have to run a replicate, we have to run 5 calibration points, we have to run a continual calibration verification every 10 injections, an internal standard, and then we have to do a statistical analysis and data review. And I took this picture in the lab yesterday because I wanted to share it with you, but this is 3 samples. 3 paid pesticide samples is in that little cartridge there that goes into the instrument. 15 sample preparations to run 3 paid samples. So this is just a glimpse of what it takes for us to make sure that we are giving you good, reliable, repeatable data, that we're doing a good job at, you pay us for reliability and accuracy, and this is how we make sure that we give it to you. When ORELAP accredits a laboratory, they're accrediting to method, matrix, and analyte. The method obviously is the method that we're using to get the results. In the example of pesticides, the method that we use is the AOAC method 2007.01. The matrix is what's the sample material that we're using, if it's a cannabis flower or a cookie or an extract. And then the analyte is the compound of interest that we're looking for. So in the case of pesticides, we have 1 method, 2 matrices, the biological and the solids according to ORELAP, and then 59 analytes. And if a lab fails any one of these, they're not going to get accredited for that service. So it's really, really comprehensive. And again, for pesticides, 59 analytes, we have to prove our proficiency to get good results on each of those analytes twice a year. Labs do not have to be accredited for all services to be licensed. And we've already seen that. There are 2 labs today that are licensed by OLCC. One of them has not been accredited for all services, and one of them has. So, and we've gotten a lot of questions at OG Analytical about this. How can a lab be licensed by the OLCC and not be accredited for everything? Well, not every lab is going to want to offer all services. Maybe they haven't chosen to invest in the infrastructure to do pesticide testing, but they're really good at potency testing, so they want to offer that as a service. Or maybe they're really good at field sampling, that's their area of expertise, and they want to do the sampling, but not the rest of it. So this offers labs the opportunity to specialize in one area and offer that one area of service to the industry while they're licensed and accredited for that service without having to do the full scope. And I don't know what, you guys could tell me more than I could tell you what you're interested in if you want to go to a full service lab, or if you're maybe just doing product development. Maybe you just want, maybe you have a favorite lab that just does potency testing for you and you love working with them. This affords you the opportunity to continue doing that. Give me just a moment, I'm almost done, and we'll do questions at the end. Thank you. Again, there are 2 regulatory authorities for labs. The first one is ORELAP, which we've been talking about, and that's the accreditation. That ensures the competency of laboratories to perform the analysis. You have to be accredited by ORELAP to get your OLCC license. And then secondarily, there's the OLCC licensure, which ensures the compliance with state regulations. So this is another strong area of confusion, I think, for people, that there are 2 regulatory agencies here, ORELAP and the OLCC. And again, you have to be ORELAP accredited to get your OLCC license. You can be ORELAP accredited and not have your OLCC license, but you cannot be ORELAP, or you cannot be OLCC licensed without your ORELAP accreditation. Again, there are 9 labs currently accredited for at least 1 regulatory analysis, and only 2 labs are currently licensed for business by the OLCC. There is a full list on the ORELAP website. This is a really long URL. If you Google ORELAP and cannabis testing, you'll find this list, so you don't have to scribble this down if you don't want to. But this is a dynamic list as they add laboratories to this list, or as they add laboratories to their accreditation, you will see them added to this list. So you can see again here, this is the laboratory names, and then we've got the scope over here. The scope of accreditation is which services the laboratory is accredited for. We've got potency, solvents, pesticides, sampling, microbiology, water activity, and moisture. These are all of the required regulatory compliance analyses, and you can see that it's denoted here which analyses that the laboratory is accredited for. And here's us again. We're proud of this. Check us out. Pretty much everything. We decided not to do micro because micro is only required for edibles and only on some audited samples. So we just decided not to go there, but for everything else we are accredited. Thank you. We worked really, really hard for that for a really long time, by the way, so it was really quite a celebration for us when we got it. The gist of it is that we finally now, as of October 1st is the current date for the implementation of this. Comprehensive quality assurance is finally available because we have this requirement for laboratories to be accredited. It is a very, very time-consuming and expensive process for the lab, and it makes sure it makes sure that your lab is obviously competent to do the work, which means that all accredited labs have super strengths in analytical chemistry. I kind of feel like our lab is Superman, you know. But it's important for everyone to recognize that because this is a time-consuming and expensive process, fees are going to go up. Your turnaround time is going to slow because we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that we're giving you good data. And the benefit of all of it is that your consistency and your data integrity is going to skyrocket. You're going to see, you're probably familiar at this point, for any of you that have or read stories about people that have submitted samples at multiple different labs, that you get widely varying answers from the different places you submit those samples. Once all labs are required to be accredited and prove their proficiency, that variability is going to go way, way, way down. You're going to see much, much better reproducibility from lab to lab. So back again to my original question, what does ORELAP accreditation mean to the industry? It means that you're finally going to get data you can trust, and we're finally going to be offering consistent, safe cannabis for consumers, and you finally get legitimate partnerships with your analytical laboratories. OG Analytical is not OLCC licensed today. We are not on the OLCC license list. I want to be transparent about that, but we have our security inspection scheduled for October 3rd, which is next Monday at 9 a.m. We have all of our ducks in a row. I have no doubt that we're going to pass our security inspection. So we should have our OLCC license by the beginning of next week. So, and we're closing to move for a few days. The city of Eugene would not give us our land use compatibility statement for our current location, so we're moving this weekend, and we will be closed for the beginning of next week. We're hoping to reopen on Wednesday for business, but it might take us a little bit longer. We'll keep everyone posted through our newsletters. But just so you're aware, if you do testing with us currently, we are expected to have our OLCC license beginning of next week, which means your test results will be valid. All right, I want to open it up for questions. And we had one over here. Do you still have a question for me? OG Analytical is not offering that service. We previously partnered with Phylos Bioscience to do that, and then they started, because they didn't want to take in the samples themselves, so we were taking in the samples for them and then just passing those samples off to them. They are now taking those samples in themselves, and that's their area of expertise, so we highly recommend working with Phylos Bioscience to do the plant sexing. Okay, awesome.